Hello and welcome back to the Delve podcast. Today we're talking about automaticity and the dual process model of cognition. I'm Allie. I'm a staff therapist here at Delve Psychotherapy of Chicago.
And I'm Adam. I'm the executive and clinical director at Delve Psychotherapy of Chicago.
Yay! Help us spread the word with this podcast, please. We do rely on word of mouth, so do share the love. Be much appreciated. Do follow us on Instagram at Delve Psych Chicago. We post some really great clips over there, little juicy tidbits.
And genius, honestly. I think it's just all genius over there.
I mean, yeah, who posts those clips? I don't know. Some genius person. Me. And also follow us on Substack, delvepsych.substack.com. Here at Delve Psych, we offer individual, couples, group, and family therapy. If you're interested in a free consultation call, head on over to delvepsych.com. That's DELVEPSYCH.com.
And I think we're both sleepy today, and also I think we're like stressed and busy today. So if you can hear us trying to hype up a little bit, that's what we're doing, is we're trying to hype ourselves up so we can have a conversation.
Yes. Also, Adam, can you check your mic settings? Because you sound a little like in a fishbowl, kind of.
You see, actually, no,
You're not?
I'm on the right.
You are?
I'm on the right doodly dad, yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. No, I'm not. Da 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 da.
See, you sound so much better that way.
And I'm proud of you, Allie, because when we first started doing this podcast, I was like, I need you to watch out for any time that my mic settings are off. And you're like, I hear no difference. And now
I couldn't tell.
Caught it in no time. So the ear's getting better.
Yeah, it is. Now I'm like, nah, doesn't sound as good.
Yeah, we're missing the crisp grumble.
There you go. Okay, so automaticity and the dual process model of cognition. A lot of, smarticle words and maybe words that the layperson doesn't understand. So how are we going to break it down for these people listening? Where should we start with this? Yes.
Well, I think the major thesis that I'm trying to get across to people in this particular framing is the fact that the brain is on autopilot the vast majority of the time. I don't think that people want that to be true. I don't think that people automatically believe it to be true, but that is what the brain is doing. It is more efficient in terms of just broad resources. The brain does not want to be calculating things every single time it needs to calculate things. It doesn't want to figure things out at every moment of the day. If you've ever heard somebody say, I don't really want to think right now, that's going to be related to this topic of conversation. But I just want people to understand that far, far, far more about the human experience than they have ever realized before is the brain on autopilot. And we'll get into kind of the theory that defines autopilot and what that actually means and what the alternative really is.
Okay. So automaticity is basically the moments when your brain is just sort of doing its thing, not really like having to do a lot of like super conscious thinking.
Exactly. So these are the moments when you're not really paying attention. You say something that you didn't mean to say. You put your phone in the fridge. We've had that example before. You end up like driving to the wrong location because you're not paying attention, or you miss your exit or whatever else. The brain's on autopilot. You're not really thinking.
Yeah. Or in the opposite direction, there's been times where like I've driven home, I've gotten into my parking space at home. Do I remember like exactly like making all the turns? Like, and being specific about changing lanes, and like not always. I'm like, oh, that's kind of scary. I got here safe. That's good. But like, was I like consciously like having to think through all of those steps of getting home? No, my brain just like knew to get home.
It was somewhere else.
Yeah. I've talked to my friends about this. It happens to all of us.
Yes.
It's like, oh shoot, I got here, but I wasn't like super present in getting here.
Right. You think about the before COVID times when we all started working online, not all of us, but many of us. How many times do you actually kind of remember all of the individual steps of getting to work every day or getting back from work every day? It's so monotonous. It's so routine. It's so the same every day that like you wouldn't necessarily recognize many of the kind of individual changes from week to week if they're relatively minor. It's the same, and you can kind of write off those entire experiences pretty much every time.
Right. I think another example that I think is pretty common is like showering. Like, oh wait, did I put conditioner in my hair?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I feel like I did, but I wasn't really thinking about it. I was just
Right. Hopefully we can see here a little bit to kind of get ahead of ourselves, but like you can see here how this can interact with OCD. There's a little bit of a distrust in my own experience and my own history, my own, so did I turn off the stove?
Yes.
And you think about it with complex skills like that, people could be on autopilot for major, very difficult tasks. So one of the things that I wanted to get into today is the way that airlines have dealt with this and air traffic has dealt with this in history. Because so there's a branch of psychology that many people probably haven't heard about called human factor psychology, which is all about how humans interact with machines. We are a machine-driven world, and one of the machines that we interact with most is cars, but also one of the ones that we interact with most that carries a bunch of fuel and kind of is a flying aluminum bomb is planes. And so we have a huge responsibility to figure out how humans interact with these big things that can kill people. And if we are on autopilot the vast majority of the time, how the hell are we going to interact with, like, how are we going to fly this thing safely? How are we going to drive this thing safely? What are the impacts of these of this system in our brain to be on autopilot? What are the impacts of that on driving safely? You think about it. Let's take driving in particular. When you drive home and you don't really remember anything about that event and you're not terribly consciously present, you're probably still driving pretty safely. You're probably within the white lines. You're probably driving about the same speed limit. You probably are in the same lanes that you usually pick. You didn't miss any turns. Pretty damn good brain that's on efficient mode, right? Like it works. So what's the problem? Why can't we just go with that? Right?
I think the difference is when you're flying a plane, you're responsible for many other people besides yourself. I mean, I guess you could argue the same if you're like driving on a road, there's other people on the road. But the responsibility seems a lot larger when you're flying a plane.
Sure, but also, even aside from the responsibility, there's also the question of like, could you fly a plane on autopilot? The vast majority of the time, probably. Like when you look at what they actually have to do, it's the same procedures pretty much every time. You could operate on a liver on autopilot pretty effectively the vast majority of the time. If you know how to do it, you've done it a million times, it's pretty routinized. You kind of do the thing in these particular orders and just make sure that you do the things. There's a couple of potential downsides, though. One is that when we're on autopilot mode, we tend to be blind to anomalies. So something's different, and I'm not really picking up on that. It's actually one of the things that they kind of talk about, like veteran pilots will talk about the when there's a problem on a flight, there's going to be something in the back of your mind that's like saying there's something weird, there's something I'm missing. And veteran pilots get better and better and better at listening to that and saying, I just want to double check some things here. And so that's a way of kicking yourself out of automatic mode and into processing mode. If I'm in automatic mode, I'm going to miss all those signals. When you're driving a car, what happens when a bunny runs across the road? When a squirrel runs across the road? It's such a clear signal that something
Yeah,
is
like,
different
ooh,
now
yeah.
that I need to lock in. And all of a sudden I'm driving, like I'm
Yes,
paying attention to
I'm locked
driving.
in. Yeah.
Right. And so that's again the switch from automatic mode into processing mode. But the rest of the time, the brain is on automatic mode. And so if there's no clear signal that there's some major difference and everything seems to be carrying on as it typically does, even though it might not be, you'll miss it. That's the problem with autopilot, is you'll miss it. And so that's one issue, is I'll miss anomalies. The other is that because the brain wants to be efficient, it keeps trying to cut more corners. And so it will keep looking for little opportunities to say, oh, well, what if I kind of do that step a little bit? Or what if I just skip that one and go to the next one? Like, all without conscious awareness. Yeah, so when you're baking, for instance, if you miss one of those little steps, it will end up affecting the final product. When you are doing surgery, if you don't quite clean that line quite the way that you need to, then the infection risk is higher. And so you end up needing, there's a wonderful book called the Checklist Manifesto that gets into the vast improvements in health outcomes that came from doctors adopting checklists. That's it. All they needed to do was adopt checklists, and that's entirely because of the automaticity problem. I will be on autopilot and I'll miss things. I'll miss things because it's routinized. I'm not paying attention. And if that's the case, then a checklist just makes sure that I follow all the steps. But here's the other trap, and where we come back to airlines. The thought that I think a lot of people have about, oh, that person's not paying attention, is we need to tell them to pay attention. It's their job to pay attention. You're responsible for all these people. You need to pay more attention. And that, as I understand the history here, I could be off on some of this, but as I understand the history here, that was the tact that the NTSB in America took for airline disasters in the past. They would blame the person who wasn't paying attention, who missed the detail. And in the 70s, I think it was, they realized that doing that was not reducing crashes. And so they took a completely different tact. They stopped blaming people and they started looking at systems. And I think this is one of the better, this is why I get so obsessed with plane crashes, because I think there's so much good psychology coming out of the NTSB in particular. When you stop blaming people and you start looking at systems, then you start seeing how people are set up to succeed or fail in certain circumstances. You accept the reality of the psychology that people are bringing into the situation, and you actually start creating structures that can really work. We just had, I know I'm monologuing a little bit, but I'm excited. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's good.
We just had that big accident up in Newark where an air traffic controller told a fire truck to go ahead and cross the runway as somebody else is landing. I hope you hear how this is the automaticity problem, right? And you can even hear in the ATC audio, you can hear the air traffic controllers say something like, oh gosh, what was it? Truck one, clear to cross the runway, blah, 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 whatever it is. And you can hear that delay. That's that thing going off in the back of the mind. There's something different that I'm missing here. I don't know what it is. I can't tell what it is. And afterward, it's clear as day that the air traffic controller told a plane to land and a truck to cross the same runway at the same time. So blame the person, right? But afterward, the director of the NTSB, Hominy, I can't remember her first name right now, but she, like the reporters and the media were immediately kind of jumping down this guy's throat and saying, like, this is human error, right? And she, on the day, in the moment, stopped everybody and was sort of like, essentially, we don't do that. And we don't do that because there is context here, and I'm sure of it. I don't have it all yet, but I'm sure that there's context for what's happening. So there was context. It seems like there were fewer people in the tower than typical. So there's one guy doing multiple jobs.
Yeah.
He was exhausted at the end of his shift.
Yeah.
And also, I think it was the Port Authority. I'm not certain of that, but the allegation was that the Port Authority was supposed to have transponders in these trucks so that if you made a mistake because you're tired and distracted and overworked in a moment, then a transponder would go off and say, hey, dude, there's a truck
Stop.
and a plane, like, stop.
Yeah.
And so her tact in that moment was very much to say, we do not blame people. This person was in a situation where the human mind can fail. Why on earth would you blame him for that?
Mm.
And you will fail, just like we did through the 70s and back in time. You will fail at reducing accidents if you just blame people for you have to pay attention. You have to pay attention. You will fail.
Man, yeah, so many thoughts, because it's a scary thought to think that your doctor doing surgery on you or the pilot of the plane that you're sitting in is on autopilot to some degree. And think of how often you are on autopilot in your life. Maybe the stakes of the activities that you're doing aren't as high. You're not a doctor yourself. You're not a pilot yourself. So it's lucky that your activities aren't as life or death. So, it's easy to blame and be really upset with this air traffic controller. Like, what the heck? Like, clearly these two things were going to crash. Like, how could you have not seen that? Like, it's so easy to get mad at the guy because it seems, oh, it's so obvious. It's so obvious. And we're humans and there's error. And I'm sure you've made similar mistakes when your brain has been on autopilot. You just weren't an air traffic controller.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So now here's a question for you. Do therapists go on autopilot?
I would like to say no, but we're all human, right? That's kind of like the moral of the story in this episode, I think. And I would be lying if I said that as therapists, if we're really tired, we're on 5 sessions back to back, whatever, that we don't kind of start to disengage a little bit and maybe catch ourselves like, oh shoot, I wasn't really actively listening right there.
Absolutely. It's impossible to not. I train therapists. I teach therapists. I trained you. But it is impossible to not. It is impossible to pay attention all the time. That's one of the biggest things I want the listener to take away from this podcast episode in particular, is whatever job you are doing, whoever you direct, whoever you instruct, they cannot pay attention all the time. They will miss things. And a therapist will miss things. It is just the way the brain works. And maybe we wish it wasn't so, but there are problems with doing it the other way. One really interesting finding, maybe I'll do this in 2 tracks. When you look at savant-like experiences, people who have these incredible abilities, especially incredible memory abilities, often, though not always, but often it also is accompanied by some degree of autism spectrum disorder. And what's interesting about that is that one of the things we think might be true about autism is that it is what's called a pruning problem. So the brain starts with more neuronal connections and probably more neurons. I'd have to check that second detail, but more neuronal connections at a younger age than it has older in life. And you can physically see this in the brain over time, as you'll see very normal, natural atrophy in the brain over time. What the brain is doing, it is very intentionally saying, I don't need that, I don't need that, I don't need that, I don't need that. And it gets rid of stuff over time. In autism, it seems like that either doesn't happen as quickly or as efficiently or as much, or something like that. So we end up keeping more neuronal connections. And you start to think about the autism experience, especially savant-like behaviors, and it does kind of seem like the brain is doing more of certain things. You look at some of the sensory issues in autism, and it's almost like we're paying more attention to sensory input. And you look at savant-like behavior. We're paying more attention to the day of the week that every single day ever fell on throughout the entire, like we're hanging on to more stuff, or we're attending to more stuff. And what neurotypical brains tend to do is they sort of figure out what's important and what's not, and come up with these systems to automatize, to say, like, what day of the week was March the 12th of 1982? I don't know. It's not that relevant. I'll look it up. It's pretty inefficient for a brain to store that kind of information, to make sure that we've got systems in place to be able to accurately calculate or recall that information. It's one of the big differences between us and computers, is computers will have those processes, and those are really important. But you can see that there's like an efficiency benefit to pruning and kind of specializing, and that kind of seems to interact with even things like autism.
That's fascinating. So for someone with autism, perhaps the brain is just more like active or curious longer, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason why the experiences of autism are so different for so many people is because if it is in part a pruning problem, then the pruning difficulties, while slower overall, would be differential in different places. And the brain is complex. So like minor differences in one area of the brain would affect entire systems. It's sort of like, imagine if you just always left one green light on in the middle of a busy city, never turned red. Just that one. You'd have downstream effects everywhere. And you would see the effects of that in neighborhoods far, far, far away. You have to kind of think about, the brain is essentially structures and pathways, structures and pathways. Pathways are white matter, structures are gray matter. And we've got these gray matter nodes connected via pathways to other gray matter nodes. If you change the way that they're interacting, which is partially the pruning problem, and if you change the way that those structures themselves are functioning, either because they're not pruning, or because they're overfunctioning, or there's damage or something of that nature, or they're overstimulated, then you get vastly different experiences, not focally, but generalized differences, because everything's connected to everything.
Wow, that's really fascinating. The brain is so fascinating. I want to bring it around back to, so what exactly do you mean by the dual process model of cognition?
Hell yeah, Allie. Great timing. So one of most psychologists' favorite books is Thinking Fast and Slow by Kahneman and Tversky. A few of the examples they bring up in the book, by the way, have since been shown to be inaccurate. That's how science works. That's a good thing. Don't freak out. But just know that if you're listening to an older book, we've updated our models here. We know more. But Kahneman and Tversky get into Thinking Fast and Slow, and they're outlining their what they call dual process model of cognition, which is essentially what I've called automatic mode and processing mode. They called it System 1 and System 2. Psychologists are bad at naming things, because now I have to go into process mode to figure out which one's 1 and which one's 2. Damn it. But automatic mode, processing mode. When you're in automatic mode, you're on autopilot. You're using gross basic rules based on your history that kind of work but aren't terribly exact. It'll be fine in most circumstances. You could bake the cake. You could drive the car. You could operate on a liver. And most of the time, it's going to be fine. Sometimes it won't. But most of the time, it's going to be fine. If you do it a lot, you'll be fine. But you'll miss when you need to process more. Allie, I've done this with you before, but try to answer as fast as you can. A bat and a ball costs $1.10 total. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost?
Oh, no. My brain wants to say 10 cents, but I know that's not correct.
And you know it's not correct because I've done this to you.
I've done this before, but otherwise I would have just said 10 cents and been like, yeah, 10 cents.
Exactly. So, yeah, that doesn't work. But the intuitive fast answer is 10 cents. That's automatic mode. The math does not work on that. In order to get it to $1.10, the bat has to cost $1.05. The ball has to cost $5. Otherwise, you've gone over $1.10. And so $1 plus 10, $1.10. automatic
There
mode.
you
Makes sense, right? It's
go.
not how it works. So in order to do that correctly, you have to get into processing mode. You have to actually think about it and say, well, I can't just add them together. But you hear the rule in there. Oh, I'll just add them together. So
Right.
that's the difference. So automatic mode is fast, efficient, and the default. We're going to operate on automatic mode as much as we possibly can. Then processing mode is slow and kind of petulant. It doesn't. Why did you say, oh man?
Because it
Why did
takes
you
more
say that?
effort. It takes more effort to be in processing mode, I think, and to actually try to figure out that math problem.
Yeah, you have a master's degree. You are smart enough to figure this out. You could do it. If I had you sit and think about it, you could do it. You'd be fine, right? But your
Sure.
brain goes, "Oh no."
I don't want to think. I don't want to work. I don't want to.
That's
Yeah.
system 2. That's processing mode. That's what that is.
Mm-hmm.
So very often, that's what we're asking our employees to do all day long.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to think more carefully. I need you to think more carefully. Don't make mistakes. I need you to think more carefully. God damn it. Look at human psychology and build a system that actually works with human psychology. What if instead of berating people for mistakes, what if instead you dealt with the psychology that really is, you start building systems that protects against mistakes?
Yeah, have like fail safes.
Exactly. So one of
Yeah.
the things that we do in our practice is something called a quarterly review. What do we do at quarterly review time, Allie?
Yeah, we look through our whole caseload, make sure all the notes are signed, double check all the balances, make sure we're, go back through the intake paperwork, make sure we're still like on track of like what's going on with this client and what they want to be working on. Because sometimes we can, go into autopilot and not really be focused on, okay, oh yeah, that's why they originally came to therapy. Have we been focusing on that? No.
Right. Yeah. Because you can get dragged away. You can filter certain things out. New things become a focus.
Yeah.
It's always an interesting conversation. I had a client one time come into therapy because they really wanted to figure out how to manage their bosses differently and like interact with honestly sexism in the workplace.
Sure.
We had a great first conversation. And that was kind of done. They were like, all right, well, I don't need that. So let's talk about all these other things. And so when quarterly review time came back around and I brought that back up, they're like, I don't think it's a thing anymore. Like, I got it. I get what's going on here. And so sometimes it's that. It's not even just that it's just that we've filtered and moved on.
Sure.
And another thing that we've added somewhat recently that I asked the supervisees to pay attention to is which clients do you tend to bring up in therapy in supervision? Which clients do you tend not to bring up in supervision? And can we just notice that? Do
Right.
something about it? Not necessarily, but can we at least notice who we're tending to talk about, who we're tending to focus on? You think about teachers, for instance. What students do you tend to talk to your colleagues about? What teachers do you tend to connect with the parents about? What students do you tend to think about when you go home? Which ones are you missing? Which ones haven't you thought of as much about? Which one can you not entirely remember? Is it IE or EI? Who's that?
Yeah.
What is the brain filtering out? This is a little check, a little fail safe to say, what am I missing here? And we can build those into every system. And if you can build a network of those around your business, the business is going to operate more efficiently, generally speaking. So, I mean, I think we do a pretty good job here of, I ask people to pay attention, be conscientious, and when you're in a file, kind of look around at things and make sure that you're just sort of generally attending things. And if you notice something, raise it and try to take care of it. But I also ask a lot of other people to pay attention to these files as well. We have an administrative director, and if she's poking around in a file and she sees something, she's got license to sort of say, hey, what's going on with that? So that you can get other people's brains paying attention to these things as well. And I think we've done a good job of having a culture where if you make a mistake, we sort of say, okay, we made a mistake. Where do we go from here? And how do we fix this? Across most mistakes, most of the time, you've made mistakes, I've made mistakes, you've caught mine, I've caught yours. Like, can we just have a system where we say we're just looking out for the clients and the problems and each other?
Yeah.
Better.
Instead of like focusing on why the heck did you make that mistake and just berating them, the clinician, for making that mistake.
Yeah.
Is it helpful? I don't think so. Yeah. But you can see how, like, I don't know. I was just thinking, my mind went to like the captain of the Titanic.
There's new evidence on that, by the way. I went
Really?
down a rabbit hole on this.
Oh, I'm fascinated by like the whole lore of the Titanic. I went to like the museum, pop-up museum thing they had, like a year ago or two ago. Anyways, what was the new evidence?
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. If people get a chance to deep dive, I would say this was within the last 6 months or so, maybe even 3 months. So a researcher did a deep dive on like atmospheric analyses of the time, and some of the reports of the day were like the sea was exceptionally calm and the sky was exceptionally clear. And so, like, how could you miss this iceberg? Turns out that's actually what was happening. There was a physical phenomenon whereby if the atmospheric conditions are just right and things are kind of too calm and too still, you actually get an almost mirage-like effect where things are in different places visually than you would expect them to be. And so it wasn't the case that the person couldn't see it, or wasn't paying attention. He physically could not have seen it before that. It would not have looked like an iceberg to him because of the atmospheric conditions. It's like some deep cut, like physics of light shit that was happening. And so there's several deep dives on getting into what's happening physically there, but it wasn't the guy's fault. Whoever was in the crow's nest, you couldn't see it.
Oh, interesting. Okay, because I was gonna make the point that the guy driving the ship was on autopilot, but maybe not. Maybe he was paying attention and he just couldn't see. But
if I
think
remember correctly, there were concerns about
there were messages
the icebergs
like, hey,
in the area.
Watch out! There's stuff in the area. There were several alerts, but it's like these these signals going off, and you're like, no.
Yeah,
I'm gonna keep doing the thing. I'm full steam ahead.
Yeah. But in this case, it really was. Yeah, they couldn't see it. But we could blame that person instead of saying, well, what could we look at this system and say, do we have any protections in place for days like that? When it's that clear, like, how do we go about navigating when the atmospheric conditions are compromising to us? If we just blame the guy in the crow's nest,
yes,
we've done nothing, and we'll keep crashing ships.
Yeah, that's such a good point. So I kind of want to bring it back to like what lay people might experience with this. Like I think you mentioned earlier, like sometimes when you just like say things without thinking, and you kind of get in trouble with your partner or your boss or whatever. And you could really blame yourself for that and be like, oh God, why did I do that? I wasn't even thinking when I said that thing. How should we deal with those moments when we automatically speak without thinking?
Well, I have several things here. Sorry, I got activated today. I'm amped up.
Okay.
If you are the sayer of things, I remind you of something we've talked about here on the podcast, the go back approach, and also clip off the end of it or like snake's tail it, however you said it, like trim the fat of that time. So after you say something that is upsetting to another person, deal with it quickly and deal with it effectively. And don't defend yourself because it doesn't matter. Just go back and work with the person. Clearly, I said a thing that upset you. Help me understand your experience. I'm with you. I'm sorry if that's valuable. And go from there. It will affect things to just take ownership. Whoops, said a thing. Maybe it was just my autopilot brain, but it said a thing. Whoopsie daisy.
Didn't mean to say the thing. Yeah.
And that's impact versus intent. I'm not trying to hurt you, but I said a thing and it hurt you. And so let's deal with that. If you are the receiver of that, one, I just wrote a blog post about the value of your partner's defensiveness. And yes, they should work on it and stop being defensive. But two, if they're being defensive or something like that, you can use that as something of a guidepost for what's important to them. And that's infinitely valuable to you. But I also remember a line for myself very often when somebody says a thing that's not the best, that a person's first response is rarely their best response, and it often isn't their last response.
I really like that. A person's first response often isn't their best response, and it's usually not their last response. I like that a lot. Because how often, like, I'm bringing up the shower again, but how often are we like later in the shower, like replaying the scenario? I'm like, oh man, I should have said that. Oh man, like if I had just in the moment approached it like this, responded like this, I would have been so much better. Well,
right.
You responded automatically.
And now go back and fix it.
Now go back and fix it, because you always have that opportunity to go back.
Right.
It's
what
not
I
too
wish
late.
I said was blah, 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 blah. The brain hears that and says, okay, I get it. You thought about it. And I wish, it can work.
Yes. I love that. I love that.
But especially if you're working with somebody who's willing to kind of like hear you out on such things, that like, if you have the belief that the other person needs to speak perfectly and not make a mistake at every moment in time, then them going back isn't going to work because they already made the mistake. If you can have some graciousness and some understanding in the way that you process how people say things, and remember, their first response isn't their best response and it's not their last response, then when they say something that's a little biting or a little cutting, you can say, wonder what's up with them. They'll fix it. Or, I'll bring it back up and ask them to.
Yes.
And so they make a shitty comment and you say, huh, that was weird. Huh. And then 3 days later you say, hey, you remember you said that thing?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't love that you said that thing.
Yes. Yes.
And often that's enough. When well-meaning people are trying to work together, often that's enough. The other person will say, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. What I should have said is blah, 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 blah. If you're dealing in these situations, as is far too often the case these days, where people aren't negotiating in good faith, then you'll often get the double down, right? So in that moment, hey, you remember when you said that thing? I didn't love that you said that thing. The person will be like, well, you deserved it. And you're like, thank you so much for sharing with me the information that I need to make decisions for myself.
Right.
You have to listen to what's happening in these relationships. It's not just about like, are they on autopilot? Can we understand them? It's also like, once the brain catches up and we start trying to work together, are people negotiating in good faith? And are they effectively negotiating in good faith? If the answer to either of those is no, you got a different relationship on your hands, and you need to think about what you're doing here, not what they're doing, what you're doing.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If when you go back to that person, they even after some time continue to respond with defensiveness, then yeah, how are you going to respond and move forward with this person? Because while we're giving grace to automaticity today, that doesn't mean it's necessarily an excuse. Like, you can go back and like, for instance, if your partner comes to you and is like, hey, that thing that you said the other day, I didn't really love that. And you respond with, well, I wasn't thinking about it. I didn't mean to. I was just on autopilot. How is that helpful?
Not helpful.
How is that helpful? Just be like, yeah, you know what? I didn't mean to, like, that was not my best. I was not responding at my best. I wish I hadn't said it like that. I meant to say this way instead. Instead of just like being like, well, it's not my fault. I was just like, I wasn't thinking.
What'd you do? Why'd you switch to man voice there, Allie?
Well, that's all the time we have for today, folks. No. Automatically I just switched to man voice. So what does that say? Anyways. Okay. Any last thoughts on this dual process model before we go to the quote today?
I had fun with this. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Thank you for letting me rant. I've been thinking about this a lot lately.
No, this was good. This was interesting. Okay, new quote today. Dun, 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 dun. You'll be good at what you do. So if you want to be better at something, do it.
We had a long discussion about this beforehand. Do you want to read it again? Because I kind of chuckled through your reading.
It kind of broke my brain. the first time. You'll be good at what you do. So if you want to be better at something, do it.
Yeah, so I think the people first hear this, even when I was rereading it, trying to remember the context of it. I think at first pass, you hear you'll be good at what you do, and you say, "Well, I do some things and I'm not good at them. I'm not good at them, so clearly that's not the case." The idea here is you'll be good at the things that you spend effort and time and energy on. So if you keep doing it, then you will get good at it. So whatever you want to be good at, do it and keep doing it, and then keep doing it, and then keep doing it, and then keep sucking at it, and then keep doing it.
Yes.
That's how that works.
And then you'll end up, because you practice it and done it so many times, you'll be so good at doing it that you'll do it automatically sometimes.
There you go. Back in automaticity mode. So well that you can operate on a liver without thinking about it.
There you go. I wanted to bring it back full circle. But yeah.
You know, there was that story a while back of like surgeons that they did end up making a mistake, but they got caught like playing, oh God, it was like music trivia games during surgery or something like that.
No
with
way.
one another, which means your surgeon's getting bored. How does a surgeon get bored? How does a surgeon get bored?
They've done hundreds of operations. That's wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I bet that music trivia, as like crazy as it sounds, like I don't know how I would feel if my surgeon was doing music trivia while they're operating on me. I wonder if that like helps them be more, I don't know, present.
Okay, sorry. Now we're gonna tangent on that a little bit. My apologies.
Sorry.
There is pretty definitive research that you can't. What's the phrase? It's like split attention or multitasking. Multitasking is not a thing. Cognitive psychology has settled this. Multitasking is not a thing. What you are doing is rapidly task switching, and usually inefficiently. And so if you can do a task on autopilot, then you will do that autopilot task less efficiently while multitasking. And so you end up doing both tasks worse. They've sort of settled this. I mean, no science is ever truly settled, but as much as you can within the world of science, multitasking is bad. Why do I think it works? I think that people get bored, and the more bored they get, the more moody they get. The more moody they get, the more difficulty they have doing even the autopilot tasks that they are doing, because now they're processing their fury at boredom. And so I think you end up in a situation where doing monotonous tasks is bad. It just is bad. I could think of maybe one exception, and maybe two. All right. Anyway, so generally speaking, doing monotonous tasks is bad, and so you kind of get caught one of two ways. You either bore the person, which then taxes their ability to do even the tasks that they do know how to do and could do on autopilot. You kind of emotionally task them that way, or you emotionally tax the task by multitasking, but you've created a little bit of enjoyment. So the person's having a good time. They're just less efficient at the task. But that's comparing it to a baseline where the person is autopiloting in isolate. You almost always in a lab setting are going to be doing that in a short time frame. It's not 8 hours of surgery. It's not, it's never a situation like that where you are able in a lab to be able to test, like, what are the conditions of multitasking or solitary autopilot tasking for hours on hours on hours. But you look at the jobs that we do, that's what those jobs are. We don't have a great lab test for a proxy for what's really happening in the real world in many of these cases. And so I think what we're dealing with here is a negotiation between multiple bad options. And I think we need to think about the role that boredom plays in this. That's why they're playing music trivia. They're bored.
Okay, yeah. But you sort of convinced me that, like, okay, that doesn't sound good then. If they're less efficient at doing both the music trivia and the operation at the same time, then maybe don't do that. But
yeah. Yeah. So I think we need to be thinking about, how do we keep people entertained? You know, how do we keep people entertained? I have a rule for my interns. I tell them at the beginning of the year, every year. I told you when you started, like, if you've done all your work, if you're, finished all of your things, then, and you want to watch Netflix while you're kind of on the clock, air quotes, I don't care. Like, go have fun, because you have to keep your brain occupied. You have to be entertained. You have to be happy, or you're going to struggle to do this very difficult work. And I just wish more jobs thought about that, where it's sort of like, here's one. If you walked by an employee's desk and they were playing a video game, what are you thinking?
Oh, they're not being a good employee.
Yeah, automatically. They're a problem. They're not being a good employee.
Yeah.
What I've trained myself to think in such situations is, do I need anything from that person right now? Am I aware of them needing to do anything that they might not be? Is there something that I know for sure that they need to be doing right now? If so, can I just redirect them to that? Hey, do you mind taking care of that doodly dad thing? If they say, no, I'm in the middle of City Skylines building, then we know what's up, right? Like that. Okay, now we do have an employee problem.
Yes.
I won't do my work because I want to play video games is a problem. But the vast majority of the time, people are pretty conscientious. I know that's a hot take. I think most people are pretty conscientious. And if you work with them for what they really need, then the vast majority of the time they'll work with you for what you need. And so I don't think we need these tensions in the way that we tend to have them. And usually if we look at what that employee, they're probably just managing their multiple responsibilities relatively effectively. And if he's more tired right now, and we'll get to it later when he's got more energy and generally speaking gets to his stuff, I don't care if he's playing a video game. Have fun. Take care of yourself.
I really love that perspective. I feel like it's very different than this, like, always being on.
It won't work. You cannot.
It won't work. Yes.
You can't do it.
Yes. Okay, I feel like we came full circle with this podcast today. And it was fascinating for me. I even learned some things today. So I hope everyone enjoyed. As always, at Delve, we offer individual, couples, group, and family therapy. If you're interested in a free consultation call, head on over to delvepsych.com. That's DELVEPSYCH.com. Follow us on Instagram at Delvepsych Chicago. Follow us on Substack, delvepsych.substack.com. And we'll be back next week.
Hey, Allie, we said we were going to do a short one today.
Yeah, well, you got in your soapbox and
I pulled out so many soapboxes.
So many, but it was good. They were good soapboxes. So
thank you. All right, see ya.
Bye.